Thousands of years ago, the Egyptian gods decided to destroy humanity, and they nearly succeeded. The reason? Humans had turned against them, defying divine order. So, the sun god Ra unleashed his most fearsome weapon, Sekhmet. She was no ordinary goddess. She was destruction itself, a lioness with a hunger for blood. Her fury was so unstoppable that even the gods feared her. But how did she go from a vengeful force of destruction to a goddess of healing? And could there be real historical evidence behind this terrifying legend? In this video, we're diving deep into the true story of Sekhmet. Not just the myths, but the hidden meaning behind them. We'll uncover ancient texts, real temples built in her honor, and even evidence that the Egyptians may have truly believed in her wrath. This is not just another myth. This is Sekhmet's forgotten legacy. To understand Sekhmet's true story, we have to go back to the time of the Old Kingdom of Egypt around 2600 BCE. The Egyptians believed their king, the pharaoh, was the living god on earth, chosen by the gods to maintain Ma'at, the balance of the universe. But what happens when humans forget their place? When chaos spreads and the gods are disrespected? The myth of Sekhmet begins with Ra, the sun god, who ruled both the heavens and the earth. According to the Book of the Heavenly Cow, an ancient Egyptian text found in tombs, Ra was growing old and weak. Humans, once his loyal subjects, started mocking him and plotting rebellion. They no longer feared the gods. This was an insult Ra could not tolerate. So he made a terrible decision. Ra plucked the fire from his own eye and gave birth to a new goddess, Sekhmet. She was no ordinary deity. She was made of pure divine rage, a lioness with a mane of flames, eyes that burned like the sun, and a roar that shook the heavens. She had only one mission: punish humanity, and she did. The moment Sekhmet was unleashed, the world turned red. The goddess stormed through Egypt, slaughtering anyone who had turned against Ra. Cities burned, rivers turned crimson with blood. No army could stand against her. She was faster than an arrow, stronger than 100 men, and completely unstoppable. According to ancient Egyptian inscriptions, people begged the gods for mercy. But Sekhmet was not a goddess of mercy. She was a goddess of war, vengeance, and divine punishment. The more she killed, the stronger she became. And the problem? She didn't stop. Even after the rebellious humans were gone, she kept hunting. Her hunger for blood was endless. At this point, the gods realized their mistake. If Sekhmet wasn't stopped, she would destroy all of humanity. Even those who remained loyal to the gods were in danger. Ra, the one who had created her, had lost control over his own weapon. The gods knew they couldn't fight Sekhmet directly. She was too powerful, but what they could do was trick her. Ra devised a desperate plan. He ordered his priests to brew 7,000 jugs of beer and dye it red with pomegranate juice, making it look exactly like blood. They poured this fake blood all over the land where Sekhmet was rampaging. And then they waited. When Sekhmet saw the massive pools of red liquid, she thought it was the blood of her victims. Drunk on her own destruction, she eagerly drank it. And she drank and drank, until finally, she became too intoxicated to continue. The bloodlust faded. Her fury disappeared. And for the first time since her creation, she slept. The destruction was over. Humanity had been saved. But Sekhmet's story doesn't end there. In fact, this was just the beginning of her transformation, from a weapon of war to a goddess of healing. After calming Sekhmet, Ra didn't want to risk another disaster. So he transformed her into a gentler form, Hathor, the goddess of love and joy. But the Egyptians never truly forgot Sekhmet's original nature. She remained a goddess of both destruction and protection. Her priests in Memphis performed daily rituals to keep her in a peaceful state. They believed that if she ever became angry again, chaos would return. Offerings of food, incense, and music were given to keep her happy. Even the pharaohs prayed to her before battle, believing she could grant them victory. But only if she was appeased. Sekhmet was not just a story. The ancient Egyptians built temples, created rituals, and even performed secret ceremonies to keep her power under control. Some of these places still exist today, proving just how real her presence was in the lives of the Egyptian people. One of the most famous temples dedicated to Sekhmet is the Temple of Mut in Karnak. Mut, another form of the goddess, was closely linked to Sekhmet. Inside the ruins of this temple, archaeologists found hundreds of statues of Sekhmet. Why? Because the Egyptians believed her presence had to be contained. The more statues they made, the more they could keep her under control. Some believed that if Sekhmet was ignored, she would rise again and bring another wave of destruction. Another major site is the Temple of Ptah in Memphis. Sekhmet was considered the wife of Ptah, the creator god, and her priests performed daily rituals to keep her calm. Every morning, offerings of beer, bread, and incense were made to prevent her from becoming angry. Some records even suggest that lions were kept in temples as living symbols of Sekhmet's power. Could these temples be evidence that the Egyptians truly believed Sekhmet was real, or was it just religious symbolism? Either way, the amount of effort they put into honoring her proves one thing. Her story was not taken lightly. Sekhmet was feared, but she was also respected. Her priests were some of the most skilled healers in all of Egypt. In fact, many doctors in ancient Egypt were also priests of Sekhmet. Why? Because her power was not just about destruction. She also had the ability to cure diseases. It was believed that if you could harness Sekhmet's energy, you could heal as well as harm. Egyptian medical texts, such as the Ebers Papyrus, mention rituals and prayers to Sekhmet to cure plagues and fevers. The Egyptians thought diseases were caused by demons or spirits, and only Sekhmet's power could drive them away. This made her one of the most important deities for both warriors and healers. But there was a dark side to this. The priests of Sekhmet also had rituals for war. Before a battle, pharaohs would offer sacrifices to her, asking for her rage to fill their armies. Soldiers prayed that she would guide their weapons, making them as unstoppable as she was during her rampage. This dual nature, healer and destroyer, made Sekhmet one of the most unique gods in Egyptian mythology. Ancient Egyptian writings don't just tell us about Sekhmet's past, they warn about what could happen if she was angered again. One of the most mysterious texts is the Lamentations of Sekhmet, a set of prayers meant to keep her calm. These prayers describe a time when she will return if the balance of the world is broken. Some lines even suggest that plagues, droughts, and disasters were signs of her growing anger. Some historians believe that real historical events, such as famines or plagues, may have been linked to these warnings. When disaster struck Egypt, people feared that Sekhmet was awakening. This belief lasted for thousands of years, even as Egypt changed and new religions emerged. There's one more theory that makes Sekhmet's story even more fascinating. Some researchers believe that her myth might have been inspired by real events. Could there have been a period of extreme violence or disease that led to the creation of Sekhmet's legend? One possibility is a historical plague. The Egyptians often associated Sekhmet with sickness, and some texts describe a time when a mysterious disease wiped out villages. If such an event happened, the people may have believed it was the wrath of Sekhmet, leading them to create rituals to keep her happy. Another theory involves ancient wars. Some carvings show Egyptian warriors wearing lion-headed masks in battle. Could this mean that an elite group of soldiers once fought under the symbol of Sekhmet? If so, her legend might be based on real warriors who were known for their brutality. These theories show that Sekhmet's story might not just be a myth. It could be a distorted memory of real disasters, wars, or rituals that shaped Egyptian history. Unlike many ancient gods who were forgotten over time, Sekhmet remained a powerful figure even after Egypt's decline. Her image can still be found in modern Egyptian culture, and she has become a symbol of both feminine power and destruction. Many people today see her as a representation of strength, justice, and the balance between creation and chaos. Even in modern spiritual movements, Sekhmet is still worshipped by some as a divine force. Her story continues to inspire books, movies, and even video games. This lasting impact proves that her legend is far from over. Sekhmet was feared, worshipped, and carefully controlled through rituals that lasted for thousands of years. While the myth says she was a goddess, history tells a deeper story. If Sekhmet was just a story, why did the Egyptians build temples dedicated to keeping her calm? One of the most important sites dedicated to her is the Temple of Mut in Karnak. This temple wasn't just for worship. It was designed to house hundreds of statues of Sekhmet. Archaeologists have uncovered more than 700 statues of the lion-headed goddess in Karnak alone. Some scholars believe there were originally over 1,000 statues, all placed there as part of rituals to keep Sekhmet from growing angry. The reason? The Egyptians feared that if Sekhmet's spirit wasn't honored properly, she would return in her wrathful form and unleash another bloodbath. Priests would hold daily ceremonies where they chanted special spells, burned soothing incense, and poured out offerings of beer and red wine. A clear reference to the myth of how she was tricked into drinking herself into calmness. But Karnak wasn't the only place where Sekhmet's presence was strong. Another mysterious temple in Abu Simbel, built by Pharaoh Ramesses II, featured Sekhmet as the divine protector of the king. Her statues were placed in hidden corridors, almost as if she was watching over the pharaoh's reign, ready to destroy his enemies at any moment. This shows how deeply real Egyptian rulers believed in her. They didn't just see her as a character in a story, they thought she had real power. One of the strangest and most shocking rituals connected to Sekhmet was the Festival of Drunkenness. Every year, during the first month of the Egyptian calendar, thousands of people gathered to drink themselves into oblivion. Why? To reenact the moment when Sekhmet was stopped by the fake blood beer. This festival was not a small event. Tens of thousands of people participated, drinking red-dyed beer, dancing wildly, and chanting songs meant to honor Sekhmet. The idea was to prevent her from ever becoming angry again. Some ancient texts even describe mass orgies and ecstatic rituals as part of the celebration. This was believed to channel the energy of Hathor, Sekhmet's peaceful counterpart, to ensure that the goddess would remain in her gentler form. It might sound extreme, but to the Egyptians, this festival was a matter of survival. If Sekhmet was real, if her rage could return at any moment, they had to do everything in their power to keep her calm. Now here's the biggest question. Was the myth of Sekhmet inspired by a real-world disaster? Some historians and archaeologists believe that the story of Sekhmet nearly wiping out humanity might be based on a real event that traumatized the ancient Egyptians. One theory suggests that the myth describes a deadly plague that spread through Egypt. The Egyptians believed that diseases were sent by angry gods, and Sekhmet was known as the goddess of both plague and healing. Some scholars think she may have been connected to an actual epidemic that wiped out large portions of the population. Another theory is that Sekhmet's rampage represents a period of brutal warfare. There are records from the Old Kingdom of Egypt that describe violent uprisings and massacres. Could the myth of Sekhmet be a symbolic retelling of a real civil war? One where an Egyptian ruler unleashed merciless violence against rebels, just like Sekhmet did in the legend? And then, there's an even wilder possibility. Some researchers speculate that the story could be linked to a cosmic event, like a meteor impact, or a massive drought that caused chaos in ancient Egypt. The idea of fire raining from the sky and entire cities being wiped out sounds eerily similar to the destruction that Sekhmet brought in the myth. Of course, we may never know the full truth, but what's clear is that the Egyptians didn't see Sekhmet as just a story. They feared her as a force of nature. Even though Egypt's pharaohs are gone and their temples are ruins, Sekhmet's presence hasn't disappeared. Her statues still stand, her rituals are still studied, and her legend continues to fascinate people thousands of years later. In modern Egypt, some locals still tell stories of a lioness spirit that roams the deserts, protecting certain sacred places. Some even claim to have seen glowing red eyes at night, just like Sekhmet's burning gaze from the myths. But perhaps her biggest legacy is how she represents the balance between destruction and healing. She is a reminder that rage, when uncontrolled, can bring devastation. But when channeled properly, it can be a source of protection and strength. In many ways, Sekhmet was never just a goddess of war. She was a goddess of power itself, a force that could either save or destroy the world depending on how she was treated. And that, more than anything, is why she still captivates us today. What do you think? Do you believe Sekhmet's story was based on a real event? Could the Egyptians have experienced a disaster so terrifying that they turned it into the legend of a bloodthirsty goddess? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.